Good morning guys, welcome back to another video. Now I say good morning today because it is genuinely 9:48 in the morning, which for me, for a weekend, is quite early. The reason I'm up so early this morning is because today's recipe is actually something that I'm making for my family for breakfast, so I thought it was only fitting that I should do that during breakfast time. This is actually the earliest I have ever filmed a recipe video before. It's not the earliest I've ever filmed a video because I've definitely vlogged going to set for like 6 a.m. or something insane. A lot of you have been asking me to film some sort of Russian cuisine type video, and I was umming and ahhing about what that could be, and I thought a great place to start would be with, as you can see by the title of this video, SYRNIKI. So for those of you guys that don't know, SYRNIKI are like, the best way to explain it I guess would be like a cottage cheese pancake, which might not sound that appealing, but it is really good. Fun fact, I did not like these as a child because I didn't like cottage cheese. But now I've grown up, I've acquired the taste, and here we are, I'm making a whole recipe video about it. So before we begin, I should mention that it is a common theme through Russian baking and cooking that no one really has a recipe for anything. It's like super old school, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You try asking any Russian mom or grandma or aunt how to make anything, they're like, oh, just kind of eyeball it. This has been a great struggle for me as someone who likes measurements, who needs cup sizes and tablespoons, but I have noticed that with age I've also sort of become more and more like that. So keep that in mind with this recipe. It's going to be probably like the least precise recipe I've posted, but I will also leave measurements down below, so if you do have scales at home you can sort of get things down to a T. But today we're just gonna have to go with the flow a little bit, you know, use our baker's intuition, use our eyes, our ears, our mouth. I'm just joking. But it will be a little bit different than the recipes I've done in the past. I will also say this recipe was inspired by a Russian YouTuber whose video I will have linked down below, so if you are a Russian speaker, feel free to watch. Also, like I mentioned earlier, it is the morning and it's partially cloudy today, so get ready for some eccentric lighting. Let's go through a little rundown. For this recipe, you will need 570 grams of cottage cheese. Keep in mind, I'm making this for a serving of 4 people, so if you have more or less people that you're making it for, just adjust the recipe accordingly. Just make sure that the cottage cheese you're using is not super high in moisture. You don't want it really wet, and you don't want it to be made up of those like sort of hard mounds. Think about it this way: if you press down into it with a fork, you want to be able to get it to as smooth of a consistency as possible. 3 tablespoons of flour, 3 egg yolks, 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar, a pinch of salt, and a splash of vanilla. That's it. Very simple ingredient rundown list. As you can tell, there were a lot of 3s, so like 3 tablespoons of sugar, 3 egg yolks. So if you're making this for more or less people, I think the easiest way to divide the recipe up would be into 3 parts. So we're mixing all of our ingredients up in a big bowl. I also have a smaller bowl here because we're about to separate our egg yolks from our egg whites and put them in our mixture. So we're gonna start by separating our egg yolks from our egg whites. I guess I've never really shown this on my channel. It's very simple. If you don't know how to do it, just gonna start by cracking your egg, and then you're just gonna use the shell of the egg to sort of gently move your yolk back and forth, and that's it. So I'll normally just refrigerate my egg whites and then use them later to make like a scramble or cook them and put them on top of my avocado toast, make a meringue. Oh, actually, it is summer. Meringue sounds very refreshing. So just cover those egg whites with some plastic wrap, pop them in the fridge, and then you're free to use them at a later date. I'm gonna quickly whisk my eggs. And the reason I like to do my eggs first is because we're mixing everything up in one bowl. I just want to make sure that the eggs are like nicely whisked before I put everything else in. That way when we start mixing everything, I just think it'll help to incorporate them better into our mixture. Quick little mix here with the fork or a whisk, whatever is easiest for you. Then we're gonna go in with our cottage cheese. I got this from the Yummy Market, which is like a European grocery store here in Toronto. So in case you're from Toronto and you can get out to Yummy Market and you wanna get like the exact cottage cheese that I use, this is the cottage cheese moisture factor 5.6% L West. So you can get that one if you like. So we're gonna take our cottage cheese, open it up here. So this is the consistency of mine. You can see it's relatively smooth. You are still gonna have little balls, obviously. That's just the natural makeup of cottage cheese. But when you press into this one, you can get it pretty smooth. So that's what you're looking for. Just gonna dump this out right into our egg mixture. Then we're gonna go in with our flour. So I know I said 3 tablespoons of flour, but we're not talking your typical baking measuring spoons. I mean like a traditional, like an actual tablespoon, which looks like this. So when I grew up baking with my grandma or my mom and there were tablespoons or teaspoons in recipes, they would literally use like tablespoons, like the kind you use for soup, and teaspoons. So it makes for definitely like a less accurate measurement, but I would just say grab whatever spoon you use to, like, I don't know, eat soup with or something in your house and use that. I told you guys, this is what a Russian recipe looks like. It's anarchy, but I'm doing my best here to explain it to you. You also want to make sure that these are heaped tablespoons, so obviously there's not much of a dip to this spoon, so we just want like a little bit of a heap like that. Like, how much would you guys say this is? Maybe even 3 tablespoons. Let me look at a tablespoon. Let's say like 2.5 of every one of these like traditional tablespoons to these insane ones. Okay, all right, let's continue. So right into our mix here, and same thing with our sugar. Now sugar in this recipe is really just to taste, to flavor the syrniki. So if you want to honestly get rid of the sugar altogether, you probably could, or if you want to use some kind of sugar alternative. I like to go in with 3 tablespoons for this. Again, something like this. These are traditionally eaten with savory toppings like sour cream, or sweet toppings like zgushanko or jam. Think about what you might want to have it with, and then that will probably inform how much sugar you're putting into the actual mix. Pinch of salt, and then we're gonna mix that all together. So another great thing about this recipe is you don't actually need a mixer. You could use one if you wanted to, but I prefer to just hand mix. Less things to wash after you're done. So you're just gonna mix this until everything is well incorporated and you have a nice, even light yellow color going on. Just gonna add our splash of vanilla, probably about 1 teaspoon there. So that looks pretty good. So that is the sort of consistency you're looking for. You can see it comes together nicely, which is exactly what we want. Now that we have our mixture, we're gonna start forming our syrniki. This part is super easy, and also I think it's pretty fun. I like to take about 2 tablespoons worth of the mixture into my hands, roll it into a ball. It's definitely a little messy, but that's part of the fun. Like this, and then we're just gonna set it aside on our parchment paper for now. All done. Okay, so we've got 12 balls here. So now I just have a plate here with some flour sprinkled on, and I'm going to roll each of the balls into the flour. This is really going to reduce a lot of the stickiness and make them a little bit nicer to work with. You want to do this super lightly. You don't want it to be like a thick coat of flour, but just enough to cover the full surface area. I like to just toss them in my hands like this before I place them on the parchment, just to get rid of any excess flour. Now the last thing we need to do before we start frying them is actually form them into their shape. Now to do that, I like to use this super old school spatula that I think is actually from the Soviet Union. Any flat spatula will work if you don't have something like this, just like a butter knife or even the back of a spoon. What you're gonna do is just tap the top to flatten it out, probably about 1/2 inch in height. And then if you need to, just gently work around the edges. Keep in mind, because there's no rising agents in them, they're not really going to spread too much, so whatever diameter you get them to at this stage is pretty much how large they're going to stay. Ta-da! Now we fry. So traditionally, syrniki are fried on, I believe it's called clarified butter in English. I don't have that, so I'm just going to use vegetable oil. You can also use butter if you want, but I find that butter sometimes tends to burn, so vegetable oil seems to be the nice in-between option. Essentially, you want to use ideally clarified butter, if not any kind of non-flavored neutral oil. This is my pan of choice today. I'm just gonna heat this up on the stove. So just heating that with a little bit of vegetable oil. Also, because the middle of the pan tends to be the hottest, we are gonna cook our syrniki 3 at a time right in the center of our frying pan. So I've got my pan over medium heat, and I think it's warm enough, so we're gonna place the first 3 on. So with this spatula, I'm gonna gently shimmy off the first 3 syrniki and start frying them here. Now, after we fry them, we are also going to bake them for about 3 to 5 minutes. We're not actually trying to cook them through at this point. We're just trying to get a nice golden brown like searing on either side. It'll obviously depend on your pan and how high you're cooking them, but I usually find that like 2 to 3 minutes on the first side is perfect, and then you only need about 30 seconds to 1 minute on the second side. Here they are, starting to sizzle. When I was first learning how to make these, I watched a lot of different recipes, obviously, to figure out sort of what the best combo of steps was. A lot of people actually do like to cook them through fully on the pan, and I think it's even the way my grandparents made them when I was growing up, but I feel like frying them first and then baking them briefly actually gives you just a nicer consistency and texture of the syrnik. It can tend to be a little tough if you've just kept it on the frying pan for like, I don't know, 7 to 10 minutes to try and really get it to cook through. Okay, I've just taken a little peek and I think they're ready to flip. Just sort of lifted it up to see. So I'm gonna flip and then show you guys because they're a little bit delicate, so I like to use both my spatula and my Soviet tool to do it, and then I'll show you what sort of golden brown you're looking for. So this is perfect. This is exactly the kind of golden brown we want. And now we're just gonna wait about 30 seconds for them to cook a little bit on the other side. We're not looking for this same sort of golden brown on the other side, just on our first side here. So I got my second batch going here, and these guys on the cooling rack. We will be putting them in the oven later, but I just like to keep them on the cooling rack for now. So I'm just finishing up my last batch now. I'm just gonna do a quick flip here. Ooh, nice. So you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees because we're going to bake these babies for a quick 5 minutes, just to cook them through a little bit more. They smell so good. Okay, so the syrniki are back on the baking sheet. I've just got a piece of parchment paper here so they don't stick. My oven is just preheated and I'm going to pop them in for 3 to 5 minutes.
5 minutes later.
All right, here they are fresh from the oven. Stunning, amazing, incredible, divine. Breakfast is in full swing. You can probably hear the coffee maker going, the kettle going. Here they are. Okay, come on, how cute do these look? The last time I made these, I actually posted about it on Instagram, and I got a lot of comments being like, are those crumpets? Are those English muffins? I guess they are a little bit deceiving, but they're neither of those things. Honestly, I think they look perfect. If you guys end up making these, tag me because I want to see how yours turn out. They look like, they just look scrumptious. And the cottage cheese just adds this like really nice tang. I can't explain it, you just have to try them. I think it's time to let the family dig in, even though I could probably eat this whole plate by myself, but we should share. So here they are. I just wanted to take you guys through some of the toppings that my family really likes. So of course you have to have classic sour cream, the OG topping. This is my favorite, blackcurrant jam, as you can see, almost completely finished. A little bit of sugar because I personally like to do sour cream with some sugar sprinkled on top. It's delicious, guaranteed. And dulce de leche. We don't have squishionka, which is like condensed milk, but this is the next best thing. Express your genuine reactions. How fitting I have my St. Petersburg mug as I eat my Russian breakfast.
Very good.
Yeah?
I like it. Very tasty.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dad. I've opted for sour cream and sugar.
Очень-очень вкусно, Оля.
Очень вкусно. Very, very good.
Очень.
I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this recipe was something a little bit different, but actually let me know down below if you guys have had these or tried these before, or if this is like a completely new thing for you and you're like, what are syrniki? I have no idea. And if you haven't had them before, all the more reason for you to try. They're so easy. Expand your culinary and taste bud horizons. I feel like cottage cheese is not a very conventional thing to put in your baking, but here we are. The Russians have been doing it for years. You gotta try. That's it, everybody. I'm definitely gonna need a nap today because oh my god, I'm so tired. Honestly, that's what happens when I wake up before 10 a.m. on a weekend. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you're all staying safe and well, and I will see you next week. Bye.